Respected, there is a dream inside of you right now sitting in your chest, quiet, patient, waiting, and it has been there since the day you were born. Pause, let that land. I want you to hear me today, not just with your ears. I want you to hear me with your heart, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to completely change the way you see yourself, the way you see your future, and the way you understand what success really is. We live in a world that is obsessed with results, obsessed with outcomes. People want to see the highlight reel. They want to see the mansion. They want to see the car. They want to see the vacation photos and the awards and the applause. But nobody wants to talk about what actually got someone there. Nobody wants to sit down and have the real conversation about what success is truly built on. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. I want to talk to you about 3 things. Just 3. But don't let the simplicity of that number F-O-U, because these 3 things are the foundation upon which every single success story in the history of humanity has been built. Every entrepreneur who ever built something from nothing, every athlete who ever defied the odds, every single mother who ever raised her children in the dark and somehow found a way to keep the lights on, every dreamer who ever went to bed with an empty stomach but woke up the next morning with a full heart and kept going, they all had these 3 things. And the beautiful thing, the thing that moves me every single time I think about it, is that none of these 3 things cost money. None of them require a certain ZP code or a certain last name or a college degree. They are available to every single human being on this planet, including you, especially you. But before I get into those 3 things, I need to take you somewhere first. I need to take you back, because the only way to truly understand where you are going is to understand where this all begins. Music softens further. Voice drops to something intimate. It begins with a gift. Every single person born into this world arrives with a gift. Not a metaphorical gift, not a poetic idea. A real, tangible, specific, one-of-a-kind gift that was placed inside of them before they ever took their first breath. Now I know some of you are already starting to wrestle with that idea. Some of you are sitting there right now thinking, not me. You don't know my story. You don't know what my life looks like. You don't know what I've been through, what I've lost, what was taken from me. And I hear you. I hear every single one of you who feels like somehow that gift passed you by, but it didn't. Let me tell you something I know from personal experience. I grew up in Glenville, Ohio, and let me be real with you, Glenville was not a place that produced many dreams. It was a place that consumed them. I watched people around me get swallowed up by circumstance. I watched men who could have. Feet been great become bitter. I watched women who deserved the world settle for scraps. And for a long time, I was heading down that same road. I was homeless, sleeping in my car, a 1976 Ford Maverick to be specific, because the details matter when you're trying to survive. I had nothing, no money, no plan, no safety net. I had children who needed me, and I didn't know how I was going to feed them. I remember nights where I would sit in that car, the windows fogged up from the cold, and I would ask God, I would literally look up and ask, why did you give me this feeling? Why did you put this thing in me that says I'm supposed to be something when everything around me says I'm nothing? And I want you to hold on to that question for a moment, because that question, that painful, desperate, tear-soaked question that I asked from the front seat of a broken down car, that question was actually the beginning of my success, not the end. See, most people think that success begins when the ink start going right. But I am here to tell you today that success begins at the exact moment when everything is going wrong and you still refuse to let go of the belief that you were made for more. That is where it starts.
Right there.
In the middle of the mess. Now let's talk about the first thing. The first thing that every success depends on. Pause, composure, eye contact with the camera. The first thing is this: you have to know your gift, not guess it, not borrow someone else's dream, not do what your parents wanted you to do, or what society told you was practical, or what your broke cousin convinced you was safe. You have to know your own personal God-given gift. And here is how you find it. Your gift is not what you are good at. I want you to hear that clearly. A lot of people are good at things they don't love. A lot of people are skilled at jobs that are slowly draining the life out of them. Your gift is not what you're good at. Your gift is what you cannot stop doing. Why? Our gift is the thing that when you are doing it, time disappears. Your gift is the thing that gives you energy instead of taking it away. Your gift is the thing that even when it's hard, even when it's not paying yet, even when people are laughing at you for pursuing it, you still come back to it over and over again, because that thing keeps calling you. Steve Harvey and I say this not to talk about myself in a third-person kind of arrogance, but because my story is the testimony Steve Harvey could not stop making people laugh. Even when he was broke, even when he was homeless, even when the clubs he was performing at were empty, Even when the booker would pay him $40 and he needed 400, even then he would get on that stage and he would give everything he had. Because something inside of him knew, even before his mind could fully articulate it, something inside of him knew that laughter was his assignment. Your gift is your assignment. And here is the most dangerous thing about not knowing your gift or not pursuing it. You will spend your entire life helping somebody else build their dream. You will give your best years, your best energy, your best ideas, your best mornings, your best creativity, and you will pour all of it into a vision that was never yours. And one day, probably around 2 or 3 in the morning, you will lie awake and feel a hollowness that no paycheck can fill. You'll have a house, maybe even a nice one. You'll have a title, maybe even an impressive one, but you will feel empty because you traded your assignment for approval. You traded your purpose for comfort. You traded the life you were designed to live for the life other people expected you to live. And that right there is the real tragedy. Not poverty, not failure, not rejection. The real tragedy is a person who dies with their gift still inside them. Unused, unlived, unknown. Voice gets quiet. Almost a whisper. I don't want that to be your story. I don't want you to get to the end of your road, however long or short it may be, and look back and realize that the very thing you were sent here to do, you never did. Because you were afraid, because you were waiting, because you were listening to the wrong voices. Now let me talk to you about something that will challenge every excuse you've ever made about why you haven't stepped into your gift yet. And I say this with love. I say this as someone who has stood exactly where you are standing. Most people do not pursue their gift because of fear. And I am not talking about a small, manageable, rational kind of fear. I am talking about the deepest, most paralyzing kind of fear that a human being can experience. The fear of being seen, the fear of being judged, the fear of starting and failing, the fear of what happens if you actually try with everything you have and it still doesn't work. That fear is real. I am not going to stand here and minimize it. It is absolutely real. Here is what I have learned and what every person who has ever built something great has learned. The fear never fully goes away. The goal is not to eliminate the fear. The goal is to make your dream bigger than your fear. When I walked out onto that stage for the first time in my life, knees shaking, voice trembling, heart pounding so hard I thought people in the front row could hear it, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But you know what was bigger than that terror? The knowing. The knowing that this is what I was supposed to do. That inner voice, that whisper that most people spend their whole lives trying to quiet, that voice was louder than the fear. And so I jumped, and I want to talk about that jump. I want to talk about it in a way that goes beyond the motivational poster on the wall. Because people talk about take the leap and jump and the net will appear, and it all sounds very inspiring in theory. But nobody really tells you what it feels like to actuate. I'll be in the air, after you've jumped but before you've landed. That space, that terrifying, exhilarating, disorienting space between where you were and where you're going, that is where character is built. That is where faith is tested. That is where most people turn around and go back. Most people, when they feel the wind of uncertainty rushing past them after they've jumped, they panic. They grab for the nearest branch. They go back to what was safe. They go back to what was familiar, even if what was familiar was miserable, because misery at least is predictable. And human beings by nature will often choose predictable pain over unpredictable possibility. But the ones who succeed, the ones who actually get to the other side, they learn to stay in the air a little longer. They learn to trust the jump. I stayed in the air for a long time. Years of struggling, years of wondering, years of watching other people rise while I was still trying to find my footing. But I never went back. And that decision, that stubborn, sometimes irrational, deeply rooted decision to never go back, that is what eventually brought me to ground that was solid, ground that was mine. Deep breath. Music shifts slightly. Now I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, not to me, but to yourself. What is your gift? Not what do you think you should do? Not what makes logical sense. Not what pays the bills right now. What is the thing that lives inside of you that has never fully gone quiet? What is the thing you think about in the shower? What is the thing that makes you light up when you talk about it, even when nothing in your circumstances gives you any reason to be excited? That thing, that's your gift. And your success, your real, meaningful, lasting, soul-level success depends on you having the courage to claim it. Pause. Now knowing your gift is the first thing, but knowing it is not enough. And this is where so many people stop. They have the R, evolution. They identify the dream. They feel the fire, and then they wait. They wait for permission. They wait for the right moment. They wait for the fear to disappear. They wait for someone to believe in them. And the waiting becomes its own kind of prison. The second thing, which I will get to in our next part of this conversation, that second thing is what turns the gift from a dream into a reality. It is what separates the people who talk about their dreams from the people who live them. And it is more difficult than most people are willing to admit because it requires something that our culture does not celebrate. It requires something that no one is going to applaud you for in the moment. But it is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to build a life of genuine, authentic success. Long pause. Smile, we'll get to that. But right now, I want to leave you with this thought as we close out this first part of our conversation together. You were not born to be average. I know that. That might sound like something you've heard before. I know it might sound like the kind of thing people say to make you feel good. But I am not saying it to make you feel good. I am saying it because it is the truth. A profound, biological, spiritual, undeniable truth. The human being you, the person watching this right now, the human being was not designed for mediocrity. You were designed for purpose. You were wired for impact. You were built with a capacity for greatness that, in most people, never gets fully activated. Not because they weren't capable, but because they never decided. Success is a decision, not a circumstance, not a lucky break, not a privilege reserved for a certain kind of person. It is a decision. A daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes moment-by-moment decision to keep moving toward the gift that is inside of you. And that decision starts today, right now, in this moment, with whatever you have and wherever you are, because the world is not waiting for perfect seed auditions. The world is waiting for people who are willing to show up imperfect, unprepared, afraid, and press forward anyway. I want to pick up right where we left off, because in part one, we talked about the gift. We talked about that thing living inside of you that has been quietly calling your name since the day you arrived on this earth. And I genuinely, deeply hope that something in that conversation stirred something in you. I hope it cracked something open. Because that crack, that little bit of light getting in, that is where transformation begins. But now we have to go deeper. Because here is the truth that most motivational content will never tell you. Here is the part that gets left out of the highlight reels and the success stories and the Instagram captions with the private jet in the background. Knowing your gift is just the beginning. And beginnings, as beautiful as they are, do not build legacies. What builds legacies is what comes after the beginning. What comes after the excitement wears off. What comes after the people stop cheering. What comes after the world stops paying attention and you are left alone with your dream and your doubt and your decision. What builds legacies is the second thing that every success depends on. And that second thing is discipline. Pause. Let the word sit. Now I know. I know you have heard that word before. Discipline. It has been said so many times that for a lot of people it has lost its weight. It has become background noise. Another motivational buzzword that people hashtag and post about and then ignore on Monday morning. When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and the bed is warm and the world outside is cold and dark. But I am not talking about discipline as a concept today. I am not talking about it as an idea you admire from a distance. I am talking about discipline as a way of life, as a daily practice, as the single most important separator between the people who dream and the people who achieve. Let me tell you something about what discipline actually looks like from the inside, because from the outside it looks glamorous. From the outside, discipline looks like a perfectly structured morning routine and a clean desk and a green smoothie and a six-pack. But from the inside, from the lived day-to-day, unglamorous reality of it, discipline looks like choosing what you need over what you want every single day, even when it hurts. Every single day. Even when you are tired. Even when you are discouraged. Even when you feel like you have been giving everything and getting nothing in return. Even when the people around you are relaxing and celebrating and living easy while you are grinding in the dark. Even then, especially then, voice deepens. Something personal is coming. I want to tell you something that I have never quite found the right words for until right now. When I was building my career, and I used the word building loosely, because for a long time it felt less Ike building and more like digging when I was in those early years, trying to make it as a comedian, trying to make a name for myself, trying to convince the world that I had something worth hearing. I faced a specific kind of pain that I think very few people talk about. It was the pain of invisible progress. You know what invisible progress is? It is when you are working. You are putting in the hours. You are showing up every day. You are doing the thing. But nothing is changing. Not on the outside anyway. Not in any way that anybody else can see. The bank account looks the same. The opportunities are not rolling in. The phone is not ringing off the hook. And the people around you are starting to look at you with that look. That pitying, slightly uncomfortable look that people give someone who they've decided has been chasing a dream too long. And that look right there, that is one of the hardest things a dreamer ever has to face. because it plants a seed of doubt. D, if you water that seed with enough sleepless nights and enough empty mailboxes and enough rejection letters and enough moments of comparison where you look at someone else's life and then look at yours and feel the gap between them like a physical weight on your chest. If you water that seed long enough, it grows. It grows into this voice in your head that starts whispering things. Quiet at first, then louder and louder. Maybe they're right. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe you are not who you think you are. Maybe it is time to be realistic. Maybe it is time to quit. And I want to speak directly to that voice right now. That voice is a liar. Quiet, firm, unshakable. That voice is the voice of your old life trying to keep you from your new one. That voice is the resistance that shows up every single time a human being gets close to a breakthrough. And here is what I need you to understand about that voice. It gets loudest right before things change. The moment right before the death or opens is always the moment that feels most like the door is never going to open. Discipline is what keeps you at the door. Discipline is what keeps your hand on the knob when every logical, rational, sensible part of your brain is telling you to walk away. Discipline is not motivation. I want to make that distinction very clearly because people confuse the two all the time. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes. It surges when you watch a video like this one or read something powerful or have a great conversation that fires you up. And then it fades, just like every emotion fades. Discipline is not an emotion. Discipline is a commitment. Discipline is a structure. Discipline is a system you build so that your actions are no longer dependent on how you feel. Because feelings are unreliable. Feelings will tell you to sleep in when you should be working. Feelings will tell you to give up when you are 3 feet from gold. Feelings will tell you that you are not ready, not were. Thou art not capable. And if you build your pursuit of success on the foundation of feelings, your success will be as inconsistent as your mood. But if you build it on discipline, on the unshakable, non-negotiable commitment to show up regardless of how you feel, then you have built something that weather cannot destroy. Walking slowly. The room is with him. Let me take you into the practical reality of what this looks like. Because I think sometimes we talk about discipline in such abstract terms that people don't actually know what they're supposed to do with it. So let me be specific. When I was coming up, I made a decision. A real concrete, written down, committed to decision about what I was going to do every single day to move toward the life I believed I was supposed to have. Every day, regardless of what happened the night before, regardless of how the last show went, regardless of whether I had eaten a real meal or slept in a real bed, every day I was going to work on my CR. Every day I was going to study the people who were where I wanted to be. Every day I was going to put myself in positions where my gift could be seen, could be tested, could be refined. Not some days, not when I felt inspired, not when the conditions were favorable. Every day. And I want to tell you something about that kind of daily commitment. At first, it feels monumental. At first, the idea of showing up every day feels exhausting just to think about. But here is what happens when you stick with it. When you stay disciplined long enough, the daily practice stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like a necessity. It becomes as natural as breathing. You don't have to convince yourself to do it anymore. You just do it, because the doing of it has become part of who you are. That is when discipline transforms into identity. And identity is everything. When you stop thinking of yourself as someone who is trying to be disciplined and start thinking of yourself as a lying person, when that shift happens in the deepest level of your self-concept, everything changes. Your choices change, your habits change, your standards change, your results change. Because we always act in accordance with who we believe we are. Sits on the edge of the stage, gets very human. Now I need to talk to you about something that is connected to discipline, but that people almost never discuss. And it is this: the people around you will not always celebrate your discipline. In fact, some of them will resent it. This is one of the most painful and least discussed parts of the journey towards success. When you start showing up differently, when you start saying no to things you used to say yes to, when you start protecting your time and your energy and your focus, when you start making choices based on your future instead of your present comfort, people will notice. And not all of them will be happy about it. Some of the people closest to you, people who love you, people who genuinely care about you, will feel threatened by your growth. Not because they are bad people, but because your evolution holds up a mirror to their stagnation, and that mirror is uncomfortable. So instead of looking at themselves, they look at you, and they say things like, "You've changed," and they say it like it's an accusation. But I need you to hear this. You are supposed to change. Growth is change. Becoming is change. Every caterpillar that ever became a butterfly had to endure a period of transformation that from the outside probably looked like destruction. You could not see the butterfly forming. You could only see the cocoon. And some people in your life are only equipped to see the cocoon. They cannot yet see the butterfly, and you cannot let their limited vision limit your unlimited potential. This is one of the hardest truths about discipline and about the journey to success. You will have to make choices that other people don't understand. You will have to keep going when other people think you should stop. You will have to believe in a version of yourself that no one else can yet see. And you will have to do all of this while loving the people who cannot follow you, while releasing the relationships that are anchoring you to the ground, and while maintaining enough inner peace to keep your focus clear. That is an enormous amount of weight to carry, and that is why most people don't make it. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because the emotional and relational cost of sustained discipline is higher than they were prepared to pay. But here is the question I want you to sit with, and I mean really sit with it. Carry it around with you today and tonight and into tomorrow. What is the cost of not being disciplined? Not the immediate cost. Not the cost of missing one day or one opportunity. The long-term cost. The 20-year cost. The what does my life look like if I keep making the same choices costs? Because both paths have a price. The path of discipline has a price, and the path of comfort has a price. The difference is that the price of discipline is paid daily in small, manageable installments. The price of comfort is paid all at once at the end, and it is catastrophic. Stands again. Energy shifts upward. I have watched this play out in real life more times than I can count. I have watched people who are more talented than me, more naturally gifted than me, smarter than me in so many ways. I have watched them fall short of what they were capable of. Not because life was unfair to them, but because they were not willing to pay the daily price. They wanted the harvest without the planting. They wanted the trophy without the trading. They wanted the applause without the rehearsal. And it broke my heart every time because I knew what they could have been. I could see it. I just could not make them pay the price for them. Nobody can do that for you. No mentor, no coach, no part of the rent, no partner, no motivational video. Nobody can install discipline in you from the outside. It has to come from a decision you make in the deepest part of yourself. A decision that says, I am willing to pay the price today so that tomorrow I can live in a way that most people will never experience. That is the deal. And it is a good deal, but only you can make it. Pacing slowly, deep in thought now. I want to tell you about a season in my life that tested my discipline in a way I did not know I could survive. There was a period, a specific, very real, very dark period where I had been working tirelessly for years, and I was still not where I needed to be. Not financially, not professionally, not personally. And I was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that settles into your bones. The kind of tired that makes you question everything, your choices, your beliefs, your identity. I remember sitting down one evening alone and doing what I can only do, scribe his full accounting of my life, looking at everything I had invested and everything I had received in return, and feeling like the books didn't balance, feeling like I had given more than I had gotten. And in that moment, the temptation to quit, to really, genuinely, finally quit was stronger than it had ever been. And then something happened, something quiet and internal and almost impossible to describe. I felt the gift, not just thought about it, felt it, in my chest, like a heartbeat that was saying, this is not over, like a voice that was saying, not yet, like a hand on my shoulder that was saying, stay, and I made a choice that night. I chose discipline over despair. I chose one more day over surrender, and then the next day I chose it again, and the day after that, one more day, one more choice, one more decision to stay on the path. And eventually, not overnight, not dramatically, not with trumpets and fanfare, eventually the path led somewhere beautiful. Your path will too, but you have to stay on it. Voice softens, warmth floods back in. Now, discipline is the second thing, and it is massive. It is foundational. But even discipline, even the most ironclad, unshakable daily commitment to the work, even that is not enough on its own. Because there is a third thing. And this third thing, this last piece of the foundation, this is the one that I believe is the most underestimated, most overlooked, most misunderstood element of success in the modern world. It is the thing that when it is missing turns even the most talented, disciplined, gifted people into their own worst enemies. And it is the thing that when it is present turns ordinary people into extraordinary forces. Long pause. The music holds. Something is coming. But that is for our next part of this conversation. And I promise you what we are about to discuss is going to hit differently than anything you have heard today, because it is going to require you to be honest with yourself in a way that is uncomfortable. It is going to ask something of you that goes beyond effort and beyond habit and beyond strategy. It is going to ask you to look inward. And for most people, that is the scariest journey of all.